From the early medieval world to the modern battlefield, a small number of warriors have stood above all others. Not legends or myths, but elite forces whose skill, discipline, and effectiveness made them feared in their time. This video explores the most elite military forces from the year 500 to today, focusing on what made them so dangerous, why they were respected, and how they earned their reputation. Let's get into it. Anglo-Saxon Huscarls were so dangerous because they were full-time professional warriors who mastered shield wall discipline and devastating axe combat, fighting with absolute loyalty and unbreakable cohesion. Rajput warriors were so skilled and fought to the death because they were raised in a lifelong martial culture where honor, lineage, and duty outweighed survival, driving them to master combat and refuse surrender under any circumstances. Feared for their ruthless close combat skill and lightning raids, the Vikings turned speed and violence into a weapon. The Rashidun Arab cavalry were elite and feared because their unmatched speed, discipline, and brilliant maneuver warfare allowed them to outflank, exhaust, and decisively break far larger armies in battle. Carolingian paladins were feared because they were elite, heavily armed noble warriors whose skill, loyalty, and battlefield experience made them devastating in close combat. Byzantine cataphracts were feared because they combined near-total armor, disciplined formations, and coordinated shock charges that could smash enemy lines while remaining highly adaptable on the battlefield. Tang Dynasty field armies were so skilled because they combined professional standing troops, elite cavalry, disciplined infantry, powerful missile weapons, and unmatched logistics into a unified, adaptable war machine. The Varangian Guard were feared because they were foreign-born elite warriors whose absolute loyalty, brutal axe combat, and refusal to break made them the Byzantine Emperor's most terrifying and reliable weapon. Norman knights were renowned because they turned heavy cavalry into a weapon of conquest, breaking armies with speed, discipline, and relentless aggression. The samurai were feared because they were lifelong warriors, masters of the bow and blade who fought with discipline, precision, and total acceptance of death. Mongol horse archers were feared because they combined unmatched mobility with devastating archery, destroying armies before their enemies could even strike back. The Hashishin were so successful because they turned assassination into a weapon of war, killing rulers openly and vanishing before retaliation was possible. The Knights Templar were so successful because they fought as a permanent, highly disciplined brotherhood, charging in tight formation with professional precision and refusing to retreat even when outnumbered. The Almoravids were feared because they fought in veiled formations in brutal desert heat, exhausting their enemies through endurance and cohesion before delivering a decisive counterattack. Enemies feared the Mamluks because they were professionally trained cavalry who combined Mongol mobility with heavy shock power, capable of breaking armies through discipline and timing. Teutonic Knights were elite because they combined crusading fanaticism, heavy cavalry shock, and relentless territorial warfare, advancing year after year until resistance collapsed. English longbowmen broke the power of armored knights, proving discipline and massed fire could destroy feudal elites. The Inca won wars by outlasting their enemies, using discipline, logistics, and the mountains themselves as weapons. Janissaries represented the shift from medieval feudal warfare to centralized, professional, gunpowder-based armies, setting the template for early modern military states. Shinobi won wars without fighting battles, using intelligence, deception, sabotage, and fear to weaken or even completely neutralize enemy forces. Among the Aztecs, elite warriors rose through proven success in war, earning status through captured foes in a life where only the strongest survived. Swiss pikemen proved that disciplined infantry could annihilate armored elites, overturning centuries of cavalry dominance and laying the foundation for Renaissance pike and shot warfare. Hussite war wagon fighters turned wagons, discipline, and gunpowder into a battlefield system that shattered crusader armies. This early modern Swedish shock force was effective because relentless drill and cohesion drove them to close immediately with cold steel, unlike later Swedish armies that relied on coordinated firepower to break the enemy first. The Polish winged hussars represented the peak of cavalry warfare in the early modern period, fast, disciplined, heavily armed, and devastatingly effective even against gunpowder armies. The Mughal army was so formidable because fast, disciplined cavalry fixed the enemy in place while devastating artillery fire shattered them before decisive charges swept the field. The Swedish army under Gustavus Adolphus was so formidable because it combined disciplined linear infantry, aggressive shock cavalry, and fast-moving artillery into a coordinated system that overwhelmed enemies. The Kizilbash cavalry were successful because relentless speed, tribal unity, and ferocious close combat charges allowed them to shatter enemy morale before battles could ever settle into drawn-out warfare. The Manchu Eight Banners were so effective because disciplined cavalry, deadly archery, and early gunpowder adoption allowed them to outmaneuver and crush less cohesive armies. Spanish tercios were elite because disciplined pike formations and controlled gunpowder fire allowed them to advance and hold ground without breaking, even under the most brutal pressure of early modern warfare. Nader Shah's Persian army was elite because it fused devastating musket fire, fast cavalry, and brutal discipline into a flexible force that could defeat any army it faced. Maratha light cavalry dominated their enemies by striking faster than armies could react, bleeding them through constant raids and vanishing before retaliation was possible. The Prussian infantry were elite because relentless drill and iron discipline allowed them to fire faster, hold perfect formation, and crush enemies through precision rather than numbers. The French Grande Armée was elite because it moved faster than its enemies, concentrated overwhelming force at the decisive point, and shattered opposing armies through speed, coordination, and relentless attack. The British Redcoats were elite because they could hold formation and fight with discipline even under intense fire, delivering controlled volleys that shattered enemy morale. Their strength wasn't individual skill, but unwavering order. The Russian Imperial Army was unique because it could endure immense losses, fight on in brutal conditions, and wear down its enemies through relentless resilience and sheer depth. Napoleon's Imperial Guard was elite because it concentrated the most experienced soldiers in Europe into a force whose presence alone could decide the fate of empires. The Finnish army was elite because it proved that skill, discipline, and terrain mastery could defeat far larger forces. Finnish soldiers turned climate into a weapon and demonstrated one of the most effective examples of defensive and asymmetric warfare in modern military history. German stormtroopers were elite because they used fast, small-unit infiltration tactics to bypass defenses and attack enemy command and support positions. Their speed, initiative, and deadly close-quarters fighting made them feared and reshaped modern infantry warfare. British commandos were feared because they proved that small, highly trained forces could strike deep into enemy territory, seize key objectives, and withdraw before the enemy could react. Their relentless training, aggression, and success in amphibious and raiding warfare laid the foundation for modern special forces. The Imperial Japanese Army was elite because it fused modern military organization with an uncompromising warrior culture that prized discipline, aggression, and sacrifice above all else. The U.S. Marines were elite because they perfected amphibious assault under fire and proved capable of winning battles that demanded endurance, discipline, and relentless aggression. The Zulu Impis earned their elite status through discipline, speed, and coordinated shock warfare that shattered enemy formations despite technological disadvantages. The Red Army were feared because once they went on the offensive, it did not stop. Entire German armies were encircled, crushed, and erased. Soviet offensives were methodical, massive, and relentless. Delta Force is feared because it strikes without warning, fights at night, and ends battles before the enemy understands what's happened, moving faster, thinking clearer, and applying violence with ruthless precision. Spetsnaz are feared because they are trained to thrive in chaos, closing distance fast, striking hard, and accepting levels of risk and brutality that most forces are designed to avoid. Kommando Spezialkraft is elite for its disciplined, precise combat skill, dominating close-quarters fights with calm control and accuracy. They are feared for ending resistance decisively, without chaos or excess force. Sayeret Matkul is elite because its operators combine exceptional intelligence, patience, and precision, planning missions until success is nearly guaranteed. They can strike quietly at the perfect moment and disappear before the enemy understands what happened. The PLA Special Operations Forces are elite because they combine extreme physical endurance with disciplined team coordination, trained to move undetected and strike precisely in support of larger operations. The UK SAS is feared because it masters patience as a weapon, moving unseen, gathering intelligence, and choosing the exact moment when violence will be decisive. When the SAS strikes, it is fast, controlled, and final, leaving no chance for the enemy to adapt or recover. The Australia SAS is elite because its soldiers are trained to survive, navigate, and fight alone in the most hostile terrain on Earth, relying on judgment and patience as much as firepower. They are feared not for overwhelming force, but for their ability to remain unseen, strike with precision, and vanish before the enemy can react. Before you go, if you enjoy serious deep dives into what makes people, groups, and ideas truly elite, hit like so this series keeps growing. Subscribe for more episodes across history, warfare, and human excellence. And drop a comment below. Which group, culture, or warrior type do you think truly earned its reputation?